It is a privilege to be joined today on the summit by Jonathan Matthes, who is the voice of the Indiana Wesleyan Wildcats. Jonathan, it's been a fantastic season. I want to make the best use of our time right now. Quickly, let's look back because they're going to be playing in the quarterfinals on Saturday. A big win to get to the quarterfinals against Southwestern College, 24-13. Tell us a little bit about that win.
Well, it was interesting, Joey, because it wasn't Indiana Wesleyan's best game of the year. They were a little bit off at times. I think during the season, they have a new quarterback this year, sophomore Kyle Antoine, who's really good, a lot of potential, but he's still growing. But I think there were more drops than Indiana Wesleyan's used to having happen, and they didn't really feel like it was Kyle's fault. It just seemed like whether it was too cold or whatever, there were just some issues there. There were blocking scheme issues. So I think Indiana Wesleyan's perspective was it wasn't their best performance, but it was still a win. So they made the key plays defensively. They made enough plays offensively. Very excited with how the special teams played. Which is pretty neat when coaches are fired up about that. But it was hard. It was a hard-fought game. Southwestern really brought it, and they drove the ball well late in the game, and Indiana Wesleyan's defense just was able to stop them each time. So it was a survive and advance type day, and it felt like it was 10 degrees outside at Wildcat Stadium. So it was very much just surviving the tundra last weekend.
That's all it takes at this point. You just have to get into the postseason, and then you survive and you advance and move on. 11-1 on the year. The Wildcats, another fantastic year, another trip to the quarterfinals, third consecutive year that IWU has been able to do that. Tell us a little bit about this season, too, because this is a team that has excelled offensively, and we saw that right there in the middle of the season, just some big blowout wins. But it's a defense that has just been fantastic this year and last year as well. Top 5 in both offense and defense. Talk a little bit about the Wildcats overall.
Yeah, I think the defense is probably their best unit, or if you're going to look at sides of the ball, defense is outstanding. Offense puts up very flashy numbers at times, but the defense has just this incredible linebacking core. Clayton Mosier's the star of the team. He was Conference Defensive Player of the Year. Then they have a tackling machine in Luke Bays. And then the third linebacker's name's Drake Deshetsky, who would probably be more of a star if it wasn't for the other two supernovas on either side of him. But they have an outstanding cornerback in Neil Campbell that most teams avoided this season. He was going to go to IU, and he actually transferred to Indiana to join that program, but missed playing at home and came back before the season started, which is the rare transfer out, transfer back in the same season. And the defense has just been outstanding. Like, it's been very hard for teams to score more than 2 touchdowns on Indiana Wesleyan. It's only happened a couple times this season, and one being a Division I team in Valparaiso. And then the offense. So I just sang the defense's praises. The offense has been great. They've a very strong offensive line, very versatile. They can run the ball really well. They throw it really well. And they just have a lot of selfless receivers, which is very rare now in just football. But both of their star receivers love to block, Levi Tidwell and Isaac Smith. They're both put up great numbers, but they're very engaged in the run game. And that's trickled down to the rest of the roster, where you can't really complain about, well, I have to block, I'm not catching all these passes, when the 2 top guys are doing the exact same thing. So, and I think that's also a really undercurrent of this team is just the seniors. It's very top down. The seniors have very embraced the idea of servant leadership, which is really refreshing. So the very top guys who do put up the big numbers, they're both the leaders spiritually of the team. They're leaders morale of the team. They're the ones firing up the guys. They all stay very calm when things don't go well. They don't get too hassled. And both sides of the ball really have the complete confidence in the other one. I was talking with one of the receivers, one of the senior leaders this season, and he said that if an offensive series didn't go great, he just assumed they'd be back out there in 3 plays. And that's the same feeling for the defense. Is just, you know what, if we can get off the field, the offense will score. And the offense thinks, you know what, we didn't score, but the defense has got us, and we're going to go out there. So you don't have any infighting there. And they both, it's been iron sharpening iron, to use one of the most classic cliches of all time there, Joey.
Well, that cliche comes out of a pretty good book, too. So we'll take that. That
Yeah, for
is all
sure.
right.
For
I,
sure.
I appreciate you sharing about that side of the game, and people sometimes may not share as much about the fact that it is a physical game. It's a mental game. It can be a spiritual game as too. And if you have leaders in all of those aspects, it's definitely going to make a visit or make a difference on the team. We're visiting now with Jonathan Matthes, the voice of the Wildcats here on the Summit, and I encourage you, please take the time to subscribe to this channel. We would appreciate that greatly. Coach Rhodey coming in in 2 years' time, I mean, it looks like that the program's continuing to rise. Now, it was rising anyway under Coach Langs. He steps out. Coach Rhodey comes in, and Jonathan, it doesn't look like they've skipped a beat at all. They're still on that trajectory heading towards a championship.
Yeah, no, they didn't miss a beat. I was a little worried in early last season, like, what are we going to see with this new guy? But he's just brought a different. The offense is different. That's been a big change, and I think he continued the trend of Indiana Wesleyan being a very Christ-centered program. He continued in lockstep just the football acumen that was laid down with the prior staff with Jordan Langs and crew. And a lot of those seniors who I mentioned earlier, they all bought in with the whole process. So it was the same group. They were sophomores, and they were all sophomore leaders. All of them played under the last coaching staff with Jordan Langs. When they played Benedictine last time, 2 years ago in the playoffs,
Yes.
it was a lot of these sophomores were contributors. And so now they're seniors or they're grad students. And they bought in with Rhodey's scheme, and he feels that's the only reason it's been successful is because he had that leadership group that bought in with what he was trying to do, and it's just done wonders. It's really amazing where it felt like a couple of years ago when Indiana Wesleyan made their semifinal run this is the peak. That's pretty incredible to get this far. That's been such a young program, only started in 2018. First season was 2018. And then, we were wrong. Indiana just keeps getting better. Like this is the best. This is the most all-around best team of Indiana Wesleyan that I've seen. And I started in 2019 doing games. I checked with one of the players, Neil Campbell, and asked him similar question, like, "Where's this team stack up in your eyes?" And he's like, "Well, we'll see how it plays out in the playoffs first. You don't want to get ahead, put the cart ahead of the horse." And I was like, "That's a good way of looking at it." But just like execution during the season. It's just remarkable to see such a team that's continued to ramp up when you would expect to be some lull, and it hasn't happened yet.
Well, you mentioned Benedictine, so I'll try to wrap up our time today and hope to get a chance to visit with you again sometime soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
But in talking about the game that's coming up on Saturday, an NAIA Football Championship quarterfinal, this one will be at Indiana Wesleyan once again. It will likely be chilly once again, maybe not as cold as last Saturday. I hope for you all that it's not. I'm going to be watching whatever I watch on Saturday from the comfort of my home here at in southeastern Oklahoma. So I'll keep you in mind. But with that having been said, again, a team that's it's top 5 in offense, in defense, and just continues to scroll on through against a Benedictine team that came away with a big win of its own on Saturday. Preview the game quickly.
Yeah, and it was a come from behind win for Benedictine. They've really prided themselves on. Well, you hear it a lot that our team's resilient, but Benedictine has had to test it a few times. Their O-line coach, longtime O-line coach, passed away in the offseason, and their O-line's gelled around their new coach. And they just their offense is outstanding. It's outstanding. Their quarterback game with Jackson Dooley is really strong. They've got 2 very versatile running backs. It's almost a carbon copy of what Indiana Wesleyan has. Similar matchup. Indiana Wesleyan's got the 2 all-conference running backs and Ryan Whitwell and Roosevelt Cage, and then Benedictine counters with 2 very good ones on their own. And they just have a very, very stingy defense, great cornerbacks. And then what's interesting is that nobody's been able to run on Benedictine yet. And what they do, they drop so many people into coverage. That's where they really get you, is they'll drop into coverage and make teams run. And the front who's there is just they're very tough. And so it'll be interesting to see if Indiana Wesleyan's offensive line improves from last week, because that's kind of going to be the key, not just Indiana Wesleyan's line, but the two lines going head to head, and who can be able to be what's the right word? Be able to be a dynamic team. And by that I mean, can you run it effectively and can you throw it effectively? Because there's chances for Indiana Wesleyan to attack Benedictine, but when you look at these two teams on paper, and I think you're going to see it on the field too. It was the case 2 years ago. They're very close. And those are the matchups you want to have here in the quarterfinals. Two teams that are going to meet on a very, very cold, blustery day, most likely on the plains of Marion, Indiana. And, the Ravens are tough.
Frozen tundra.
Huh?
You're going to tell me about a cold, blustery day on the frozen tundra, then we'll I'm starting to hear some NFL music playing.
Hey, you should.
Right.
That's what I got playing in my head when we're sitting out there watching those guys freeze.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, again, thank you so much for taking time with us today here. And this game and the other 3 quarterfinal games, all of them great matchups. And I know you're going to get to call a big one really quickly before I let you go. Where do they watch or listen to your game?
I think the best and only, I believe, is through the IWU Wildcats website. So just go to the football page and then go to the schedule, and there it'll say watch or something to that effect. And then you can just tune in. I know it's one of the pay-per-view option games, which there's quite a few of those around nowadays. But I promise we'll do our best to make it your money's worth and spread every penny to the maximum.
Absolutely. Well, hey, listen, with a call like what I know you're going to bring to the table, I know it will be worth our money for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Jonathan Matthes, the voice of the Wildcats. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time with us today here on the Summit.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.